Hello, everyone. This is Mike from Dimensional Walking. And today we are going to do a video, and I'm going to call this video Sasquatch and the Big Scream. Okay. So there's a guy I know, I consider him my friend that lives outside, just a little bit outside of Eugene, Oregon. So he's a hunter. He primarily does bow hunting, although I think he also uses a rifle, but he does really like his bow hunting. So he would go every year with a couple of his buddies. And so anyways, we're gonna, let me just back this up a little bit to give you a little bit more background. He would go to he had a favorite area. He used to go out and he used to do kind of a little bit of sightseeing and hunting, bow hunting. This was an area that was in the Willamette National Forest, and it was probably, I think he said about 15 miles southeast of the area that he goes to, southeast of Eugene. So it was very close to the city, which is pretty interesting, actually. Anyways, it was close to a lake. He called it, I think it was Waldo Lake. So he would go there sometimes in the summer, in the winter, during hunting season, etc. So a couple of times he was out there, just kind of looking around and scouting out a little bit, maybe scouting out before his bow hunting trip in the fall. And a couple of times he's actually seen out of the corner of his eye, he saw something move. And when he looked over there, he could see some shadows, I think both times it was a big excuse me, a big figure that was kind of moving in the edge of the woods, and he was kind of out in an open area, cut area. So he could see them kind of moving, and then they would kind of dodge in and out. So anyways, he saw this two different occasions. So he had a suspicion that there was some Sasquatch up in this area. So he's pretty excited about that because he's really into kind of paranormal Sasquatch, UFOs. We've talked for hours about all those things previous. So then one time, another time, he actually came up during the wintertime, and this was just after a snowfall. And he had pulled his truck over, and he's got a kind of this big four-wheel truck, and it's pretty powerful. So I was able to get up there because once the snow starts falling up in this area, because it's an elevated area off of Eugene. So it can get some pretty good snowfall there. So anyways, he pulls the truck off to the side, and he's going to walk down. He's kind of look over this area because it's typically, he said, it's when after a fresh snow, it's just absolutely beautiful down there. So he just wanted to get a look at it and see what was going on over there. So he got out of his truck and he started walking. He's probably about, I think he said about 30 feet, maybe 40 feet away from his truck, kind of looking over this kind of this hill down into kind of a valley area. And all of a sudden he kind of looks back, and he actually heard something. He heard like he characterized it like a horse, where they would be making those horse kind of sounds with their nose, kind of really strong nose. And he looked over there, and it was a very cold day, and he could see kind of like steam, very similar to what a horse would be after maybe a horse ran. It was very cold out, and there would be this kind of steam coming out of his nose or out of his body. And it was coming right from the back of his truck. So he was really puzzled because he knew that there was really no horses in this area. This was kind of a national forest area. And yes, could there be a horse that got out of somebody's ranch and ran over here or something? Yeah. But he got a little suspicious, and he kept on hearing this kind of grunting, strange noise. So he kind of walks off to the side. Now, he didn't approach his truck straight on. He just kind of walked off to the side just to kind of see around it. And he sees this large something. I guess the first thing in his mind, he didn't think about a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot or whatever. He just thought maybe it was a man or something, but it was really, he's getting quite confused very quickly. All of a sudden, the Sasquatch, a huge Sasquatch, stands up and just stares at him. Like, he said, I was just frozen, absolutely frozen, could not believe it. He thought it was 7-8 foot tall. It just kind of looked at him. He said he didn't have a camera. He would actually, normally he'd go and bring a camera with him, take a few pictures. He didn't have a camera with him. And so he just stood there. He was, again, he was in shock. He just stood there and they kind of looked at each other. And then the Sasquatch just turned and nonchalantly walked slowly away and walked, the woods weren't that far away from where he was parked. So this wasn't a huge walk. So he only saw him for, he probably said the whole thing probably was 7-8 seconds max. So anyways, he did go in his truck. He was pretty shaken, did go in his truck. He did have his camera in his truck. So he did take some pictures of the tracks because there was snow. So it was good. And it was this kind of snow that when you could see some tracks in it. And sure enough, they were pretty amazing pictures he took quite a few of them. And he did show me them. And all I can say is it looked like something big that had a big foot. No doubt about it. So anyways, that was kind of that. Nothing else happened. He got in his truck eventually and drove back home and told his wife, I believe, and eventually told me. Actually, I guess this was probably years later. So anyways, that was that. So then one year he was out with his buddies and they were doing their bow hunting. And I believe it was the fall year, whenever bow season's open here. I'm not really sure because I'm not a hunter, but anyway, so he was out there doing his bow hunting. And so there was three of them all together, three guys. And so that I think he normally, the way he explained it to me, they would split up. They would kind of like, one would go up kind of above and he would kind of be in the middle. I don't know why. And then the other guy would be kind of below. And this particular area they like to hunt, it was kind of like a very hilly area. Anyway, so then they would kind of just move and start walking in a specific direction. So anyways, he comes across a deer. I mean, he sees a deer and, it's in range of his bow. And, so he shoots the deer and he's quite a shot, I understand. And he killed it instantly, basically. Wherever the best place to kill a deer instantly is, he did it. And so anyways, it was a large one. It was a buck. It was, I don't know, it was maybe I can't remember what he said. He kind of told me how big the antlers were or whatever, but it was a good size. He said it was a good size. It was several hundred pounds laying on the ground. And it was dead. He went up to it and it was dead. So I don't think he was going to dress it there in the woods. For some reason, he was going to take it back out. I think his truck wasn't too far away, but he couldn't do it by himself. It was a good size. So each one of them had a radio, kind of a, not a great radio. He said it wasn't a great radio, but for what they weren't that far apart from each other. It was probably good for a half a mile, maybe a little longer, depending on the hills and everything. So he calls his buddy, said, "Hey, I got a deer. Can you come and help me? And we'll try to get it into the truck." And so he, in order for him to get a hold of the guys, he had to walk out of that little kind of, was like a little canyon area or something. And he had to walk back out kind of up onto a hill to call his buddies to come. And then he got a hold of them and they're coming. They're a little ways away. It was going to take him a few minutes to get there. So he's going to go back. So he turns around and he walks back down into this little canyon area. So he's walking towards there, not overly thinking it. And he wasn't looking. And he kind of gets within about 20 feet, he says, and he looks up and he sees this huge. Now he knew what this was. He says, he didn't absolutely. The first thought was a bear. He thought it was a bear. He thought it was a big bear. And he said, I know we got some bear here, but nothing like that. That would have been a huge black bear or brown bear. I think there's some black bears, he said there, but none of them were that big. This was huge. This would have been a monster, but it was bent over. But suddenly it raises up. And it's not a black bear. It's a Sasquatch. And it's holding this big deer in its arms, like it's just a tiny little baby. It's just tiny little nothing, and just carries it up. And now he's about 10, I think about maybe 10, 15 feet away max. And they're staring at each other. And suddenly, the Sasquatch gives out this scream. I would call it a holler, or he said I'd call it a holler or a hoot or whatever else, but it wasn't. It was a scream, the deepest, loudest scream he's ever heard in his life. He said it was so strong, it felt like it was ripping the skin of his face off, and he fell to his knees. It was the most incredible thing he'd ever seen or heard in his life. And he swears he couldn't hear for quite a bit after, and gradually his hearing came back. He couldn't believe it. Anyways, the Sasquatch did this tremendous scream, and that was it. He took one look. They both took one look at each other, and he was still on the ground. My friend was still on the ground. Jim, he was still laying on his knees, actually on the ground. Sasquatch get up and took off. Now, while this was all kind of happening, his buddies were coming from behind, and they did see it, the whole thing, and they just took off. They didn't stay around at all. They didn't help. They didn't do nothing. They just took off. And eventually they did come back, because he just went ahead. He was, I guess after the shock row, he was kind of mad because the deer situation, because the Sasquatch just took the dang deer and went, arrow and all, as far as he knows. He didn't find the arrow. There was blood on the ground from the from the deer, of course, but there was really no other thing. I don't think there was any snow or anything on the ground. I think this is fall, and it was just leaves and stuff. So there was no tracks or anything. So anyways, it was, that was it. That was the amazing story. I'll never forget that story when he told, because, when he told it, it was like, oh my gosh, he said, when he said that the skin was like pulled back, he said, it's like when you see these guys when they go in these little devices where they're testing for G-force, where you can see their skin like push back. That's exactly the way it felt to him. His face was pulling back from the loud noise. I mean, he said, I was absolutely surprised I could eventually hear. He was really concerned because this sound was so incredible. He said that was like a weapon. That was absolutely like a freaking weapon, he said. And I believe it. I mean, I don't think I'd ever want to do it. I mean, I guess if you heard the sound from quite a distance, it would be frightening and pretty amazing, but not when it's right on top of you. I think that's pretty big crazy. So anyways, that is the story. I just wanted to tell you that was one of the Sasquatch stories that I believe from a very credible source. The other thing about Jim is Jim has seen, again, I told you some of the other Sasquatches he see. I think that was pretty much his experiences there. But he's seen UFOs. He's probably seen even some other type of beings too. I think he did mention that. What is interesting, I just want to say here, is that people that, when they're young and they do see a UFO, or they see maybe some kind of a creature in the woods or something else, for some reason, and I'm one of those people, for some reason, once you see it once, or you see some type of paranormal experience, you seem to have you're garnered this ability to see more the rest of your life. And many people I've talked to seem to say that it's typically, you don't just see one UFO, or you don't see one creature, or you don't see one Bigfoot. You're going to see probably more things in that vein. So anyways, if you've only seen one thing, you're going to probably see some more. Anyways, so that's it. I just wanted to say thanks, and we will see you again. And if you like us, please like us. And don't forget, the website is Dimensional Walking, a Paranormal Journey. That's our channel. And if you want to send us an email or questions, Gmail, it's a Gmail account, which is dimensionalwalking@gmail.com. And that's it. Please subscribe. Of course, we need our subscriptions. We need to get to our 1,000. So if you could help us get there, we'd really appreciate it. And I just want to say one more thing. God bless Ukraine. What a crazy thing. Anyways, goodbye.